Good evening, family. I want to welcome you to our 6 o'clock worship service. Those who are here in person and also those who are joining us via live stream. If you would this afternoon, let us open up our Bibles to Isaiah the 38th chapter. Isaiah the 38th chapter. We'll be beginning our reading in verse 1. Isaiah the 38th chapter, beginning in verse 1. In those days was Hezekiah sick unto death, and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, came unto him and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, set thy house in order, for thou shalt die and not live. Then Hezekiah turned his face toward the wall and prayed unto the Lord and said, Remember now, O Lord, I beseech thee, I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and I have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore. Then came the word of the Lord to Isaiah, saying, Go and say to Hezekiah, Thus saith the Lord, the God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer. I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will add unto thee to thy days 15 years, and I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend this city. And this shall be a sign unto thee from the Lord, that the Lord will do this thing that he has spoken. Behold, I will bring again the shadow of the degree, which is gone down in the sundial Ahaz, 10 degrees backwards. So the sun returned 10 degrees, by which degrees it was gone down. Can you imagine in today's time that you're sick and you go and you consult a doctor, and there are some anxieties when we do that. Is the news going to be good? Is the news going to be bad? And unfortunately, you have this news that you're going to die. And so the doctor will come out and he will tell you to get your affairs in order. And as Christians, we know that death is a certainty in this life. It's an appointment that we all will have to face, appointment that we all will have to meet. And the scriptures tell us in Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 27 that it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this, the judgment. And so in our text, we find Hezekiah, who was sick, and he got the grave news from the prophet Isaiah to set your house in order. You're going to die. And Hezekiah was a relatively young man. And when I was young, I didn't think much about death. You know how you are, you're young, and death is just not a thing that pops in your mind, And sometimes God will give you reminders. I remember when I was in high school, one of my classmates, he developed cancer and he died. And I kind of looked at it and it was sad, but I didn't pay it a whole lot of attention in it. And then later on, friends would die at an early age. But I want to tell you, approaching 60, I can see death. I know that it's an appointment that I have to keep. And so the news was shocking to to Hezekiah. And what he was telling him was, set your heart in order, renew the acts of repentance and your faith, and resign to God with cheerful farewells to this world, because you're going into the next. And that was something wise to do. Set your house in order, make your will, settle your estates, put all your affairs in the best position that you can. But how did Hezekiah, how did he take this news? What did he do? And so for a few minutes tonight, I want to share with you 3 P's on this text. The first one is the proclamation, and then we want to look at briefly the prayer, and then we want to look at the promise. the proclamation, the news that you're going to die and set your house in order. So much to do, so little time to do it. And can you imagine how Hezekiah must feel? I'm a king. I have a kingdom to attend to. I have all these people that I have to look out for their benefit, not only spiritually, but also financially, also physically. And then I have my own family. You know, I'm a young king, and I'm a king that I have not an heir to pass the kingdom to because he didn't have a son. And then there's this threat that these Assyrians, they're about to invade the land. I have a whole lot to do and a little time to do it. And what was his reaction? His reaction was, first of all, he wept. He was laying in a bed, and maybe he could not get up. I don't know, but he rolled over and he wept. And when you look at these texts, you know, a lot of things come within your mind. But what would I do if I got the news? That type of thing is what? It's depressing when someone will come up to you and tell you your time on earth is about to be expired. And so maybe I would share some tears. Maybe I would go into a depression because we see that, right? It's an unsettling thing. Certainly I would try to set some of my earthly affairs in order. Say goodbye to some people. Make sure people knew that I truly loved them. But what did Hezekiah do with this proclamation? You think about weeping. Even Jesus wept at the death of Lazarus. He went through anguish when his trial was to come. But Hezekiah prayed. In verse 2 it says, Then Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed unto the Lord. And he said, Remember now, O Lord, I beseech thee, how I have walked before thee in truth with a perfect heart, and I have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sorely. Prayer. No, Hezekiah didn't turn to the wall in a soaking manner when he prayed like Ahab did in 1 Kings chapter 21 and verse 4. I believe that he turned to have some privacy with his prayer. And his prayer was, remember me. And we want God to remember us. Remember my life. Remember how I've walked with you. Remember how that I had some faith. And one might say, you know, that's kind of a selfish prayer for him to pray. But you know, quite honestly, most of us hopefully would have the same prayer. And we have to remember that he had all these things, the future of the throne and the future of the nation. And I don't think that Hezekiah asked him to spare him in a matter that he was saying, remember what I've done, God, so you kind of owe me. It wasn't a bribery thing. He asked God to spare him so he can complete the work that was set in front of him. I have some spiritual things to do, some restoration to the nation. And I'm relying on the promise that you gave me, the promise that was written unto David in 2 Chronicles chapter 6, verses 6 through 7. Remember me. I'm begging you. I'm pleading with you. And we want to be remembered by the Lord. God had gave him that gracious promise. And Hezekiah was simply reminding the Lord that, I've been faithful. I need some time. There's some other work that I know that you have assigned me that I must do. But then I want us to see that his prayer was a prayer of confidence. I'm going to God in prayer because I'm going to the one that I know can do something about anything. I'm a big component of prayer. If something goes wrong, I'm going to go to God. And why am I going to God? Because he is the creator and sustainer of life. God is so big. He's bigger than any problem that we can ever encounter on this side of life. If you're worried about the way things going, don't worry. God is in complete control. It's the God who spoke things into existence. It's the God who holds all things into place. There's nothing impossible for him. And Hezekiah had some confidence. We hear the news, and it's grave news. You're going to die. But I know I have the confidence that God has the final say. And we need to have our confidence in prayer. Pray to the end. 1 John chapter 5 and verse 14, it says, and this is the confidence that we have in him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, whatsoever we ask, we know that we have a petition that we desire. Confidence. How is my prayer life? Can I pray with confidence? Can I hold out to the end? I know what man says, but what does God have to say? How many times have things appeared to be one way, and God has simply said, that is not my will, and I can change this around? It's proof in the text. In the Garden of Gethsemane, in Luke chapter 22, Jesus, knowing that he was going to the cross, he knew what his mission in life was. He was demonstrating the anguish. Luke said that when he was praying, his sweat was as if like great drops of blood. He was going through some mental anguish. The cross was heavy on his back. Death was evident. Knowing that I am going somewhere and they're going to mistreat me. I'm going to be beaten. I'm going to be mocked. This is going to be hard. But my will on earth is to do the will of him that sent me. And in verse 42, when he was praying, he says, nevertheless, not my will be done, but thy will be done. What would be my prayer? Would I have confidence? Or would I say, God, I just need a little bit more time. I got some unfinished things to do. Lord, I have some grandkids that I need to teach about you. I have the desire to maybe see them to college. I have this plan. But your will be done. Can I use the words of Paul in 2 Timothy chapter 4 in verse 7? Can I say I've fought the good fight? I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give unto me at that day. And not only to me, but to all those also who love his appearance. When we think about what he's saying, the prayer, but also with the prayer came the relationship with God, because that's what it's all about. If I have a relationship with God on this side of life, when it comes down to approaching the next side, everything will truly be all right. I stand to the back a lot of times, and I was going over this, and it made me think about some of the saints that would has gone on. And as I read that last passage in 2 Timothy, it made me think about Billy Ellis. And I know it's kind of a grave sermon tonight, but I thought about Billy, and Billy would go, and he'd go, I go, how you doing, Billy? And he'd go, oh, I'm above ground, and I can't understand it. I'm just ready to go. And I go, man, you creeping me out. Go on with that. And I would walk into Buddy, and they would have this conversation. I don't know why I'm still here. I don't know why I'm still here. And I go, guys, really, y'all creeping me out. Quit. And sometimes I think they would have that conversation just to creep me out. But I soon learned they had a relationship with God. And we know that Billy is gone, but it's comforting to me to know that he had a relationship with God. And ultimately what he was saying is, you know what? I have to leave this side of life in order to get to the goodness that God has. And that is a good desire. Because there's a promise that God has given us. The promise that he gave Hezekiah was a promise of life. In verse 4 it says, Then came the word of the Lord to Isaiah, saying, Go and say unto Hezekiah, Thus said the Lord thy God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer. I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will add unto thee to thy days 15 years. And I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the Assyrians, and I will defend this city. And this shall be a sign unto thee from God, that the Lord will do this thing that he has spoken. Behold, I will bring again the shadow of degrees, which is gone down, and the sundial has 10 degrees backwards. So the sun returned 10 degrees, by which degrees it was gone down. You know, sometimes in our prayer life, you know, God basically has 3 answers. It's either yes, no, or wait. But the news came quickly. The text says that no sooner than Isaiah left, he got the word from the Lord, and he turned around. And he gave him some favorable news. I'm going to prolong your life 15 years. And it may not seem like 15 years is a long time, but it was enough time for him to see the goodness of the Lord. It was enough time for Hezekiah to have a son. And God gave him a sign with this promise that the sundial would turn back 10 degrees. He assured him that everything was going to be all right. We have the assurance with God. And he's an awesome God. I'm going to give you a sign. I don't want you to worry about it. What I've said, I will do. And you know, we have a sign. God gave the first century Christians a sign in Revelation chapter 2 and verse 10. He says, Fear none of these things which y'all are about to suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that you may be tried. And you shall have tribulations 10 days, but be thou faithful unto death. And I will give you a crown of life. Be faithful unto death. Paul lived by the words of Jesus. That's why he could say, I have fought the good fight. See, it comes a time when all the cares that we think about in this world really doesn't matter. And you know, there was an old saying, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. And I kind of tweaked that, you know. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but few people want to live faithful to God that can put us in that place. God has promised us. And if we're honest with ourselves, we see a whole lot of good days on this side of life. I read that passage in Revelation chapter 2, and we are living in a time where we don't have to suffer as the first century did, being faithful unto death. But God has given these promises. You know, it was a 10-day suffering. And one promise that we have from God is found in the Gospel according to John, in the 14th chapter, in verse 1. Jesus was talking to his disciples, and he explained to him that he had to transition out of this life into the next. And he told them, and he's telling us tonight, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And so I want to encourage you, family. If your house is not in order, let's set our house in order. Let's make sure that we continue to serve the Lord. You know, we sing that song, Watch and Pray, for we know not the hour when the Lord shall come. Let's watch and pray. Let's love one another. Let's be the family that God would have us to be. I know, and Sam tells me all the time, I'm ready for 2020 to be over with, because there's just so much going on, and it captures our attention. But let's remain focused on the creator of the universe. Because when I'm standing in front of God, I don't think none of that's going to matter. Let us have our house in order. Let us be able to pray that prayer. Lord, remember me. And we say that sometimes when trouble hit, right? You know, Lord, I'm just trying to do everything, and I've done this for you, and I've done that for me. And I've really tried to live by your precepts and your concepts. And realize, just as he was looking down on Hezekiah, he sees our tears. He hears our cries. And he's not far from us. All we have to do is continue to seek him. And tonight, if you're here or if you're watching live stream and you're not a Christian, it's time to set your house in order. How do I do that? By obeying the gospel of Christ. You know, life is good, accolades are good, things are good. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a relationship with God,